This was the aircraft which, during World War II, was considered Britain's identity. The Supermarine Spitter was an excellent fighter plane which, due to its speed and agility, became a favorite of pilots and was called a war-winning machine for the people. But in reality, this plane suffered from a major issue. The issue was that the engine of the plane would shut off right at the moment it was in a dogfight with a German pilot, especially when it was made to dive downwards. On the other hand, the German Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt 109 fighter plane had no such problem, which is why German pilots often dominated British pilots during the war. Britain barely won the Battle of Britain, and the biggest reason for that was this engine issue of the Spitfire. If Britain wanted a clear victory in the rest of World War II, then solving this strange problem in the Spitfire was absolutely essential. They tried everything. Major engineering firms also attempted to solve it, but no one could resolve the Spitfire's issue. Finally, a solution was found, and it was discovered by a person from whom no one had expected it, a woman, Beatrice Shilling. What did this woman do with the Spitfire that she is now credited with helping the Allies win World War II? Welcome once again, viewers, to Discover TV's videos. The issue with the Spitfire's Rolls-Royce Merlin engine was first identified in 1938. At that time, it was not considered a big deal because, before World War II, pilots didn't dive much. But in 1940, when the Battle of Britain was at its peak, this was no longer a mere technical issue. It had become a question of survival. An even bigger problem was that before World War II, the British government had already produced over 20,000 Spitfires, meaning this same problem existed in all those planes since they were all fitted with Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. And then the seriousness of the matter became clear when the British found out that the Royal Air Force, or RAF, apart from the Spitfire, had other fighter planes, like the Hawker Hurricane and Bolt and Paul Defiant, which were also equipped with the same Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. So on one hand was the intensity of World War II, and on the other, the biggest Allied power was forced to fight using planes with defective engines. In 1940, during World War II, Nazi Germany was facing off against France and Britain. During this time, when the Germans brought their Messerschmitt 109 into Allied territory, RAF Spitfires would go to counter them.
To dodge each other's bullets, pilots used advanced maneuvers. Like sudden dives or quick ascents, a common feature of World War II, planes could battle for hours using such maneuvers. Sometimes they'd dive down to dodge enemy fire, and other times they'd quickly nose up to target and fire at another plane. Now, in such a life-or-death dogfight, if someone's engine shuts off, imagine what could happen. Fortunately, during the Battle of Britain, British pilots had the home court advantage. Their fuel supply was close by and they could fight for hours. On the other hand, German pilots first had to cross the English Channel, then fight, and then return to their base to refuel. This was a disadvantage for the Germans, and perhaps that's why they couldn't outmatch the defective Spitfires. The Battle of Britain ended, but World War II was still ongoing. This strange issue in the Spitfire mostly occurred when it performed a nosedive, when a plane starts free-falling rapidly downwards. Anything that's not tightly secured, like the blood rushing in the pilot's body or the fuel inside the engine's carburetor, isn't affected by gravity, and instead of going down, it moves upwards. Unfortunately, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine's carburetor had fuel outlets on the bottom, so when the aircraft dove rapidly, the fuel in the carburetor moved upwards away from the outlet. During this time, the engine wouldn't get fuel, causing it to shut down or sputter, at least until the plane leveled out again. To fix this issue, the world's best minds were tasked with the job, including Cyril Lovesey of Rolls-Royce and A.D. Fisher of the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Both came up with clever technical solutions, but both failed completely. In fact, their solutions created new issues in the aircraft. To understand this problem, a deep knowledge of the engine's internals was essential. That's why it was shocking when in 1940, a woman provided the final and best solution, a woman now known as Beatrice Shilling, when Spitfire's production test flights began in 1938. During that time, Beatrice Shilling rebuilt and tested her favorite machine, a 490cc Norton motorcycle. This was the same bike on which she became the fastest woman at the Brooklands racetrack. Shilling was a fantastic racer, but an even better engineer. She had loved motorcycles since childhood. Around 1919, when Shilling was just 10, she saw her sisters going on bicycle trips, and she always lagged behind. So she decided to save up to buy a motorcycle. By age 14, she achieved her goal by purchasing a two-stroke Royal Enfield. Gradually, she began fixing her bike's issues on her own, and soon she was capable of dismantling and reassembling it completely. By age 15, she decided that engineering would be her true career. But the issue was, it was the year 1924, and society back then couldn't even imagine girls becoming engineers.
She was not just an engineer, but also a woman who raced men at the Brooklands track, and that was only possible because of the modifications she made to the carburetor of her 490cc Norton motorcycle, greatly boosting its pickup. Shilling didn't know it back then, but her talent would solve the biggest problem of Spitfire and Hurricane fighters during World War II. Before the war, Shilling had already spent 3 years working at the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Initially, her job was just writing technical documentation, but by November 1939, after several promotions, Beatrice Shilling reached the post of technical officer, and now she was responsible for carburetor research and development. When Rolls-Royce engineers failed to fix the Spitfire's issue, Shilling sought permission from authorities to try herself. Initially, she was underestimated for being a woman, but surprisingly, within just a few days, Shilling not only solved the issue, but the authorities laughed at themselves after seeing the solution. So what exactly did she do? Shilling simply designed a small brass restrictor with a hole of a specific diameter and then fitted that plate into the carburetor, and the issue in the aircraft was largely fixed. The biggest benefit of this solution was that this brass plate could be installed in the aircraft while it stood on the ground, meaning it wasn't time-consuming either. Now the biggest task remained installing it in Spitfires across different bases. For this too, Shilling used her Norton motorcycling travel to various bases to install this solution in Spitfire and Hurricane fighters. Shilling's solution was so successful that it was called Miss Shilling's Orifice. This tiny plate didn't entirely solve the pilot's biggest problem, but it greatly improved it. Later, Shilling designed an entirely new carburetor for the Rolls-Royce Merlin, permanently solving the issue. After winning World War II, the pilots gave all the credit to Shilling's talent. Eventually, she was honored with Order of the British Empire for her efforts. After the war, instead of leaving engineering, Shilling began working on new and advanced military projects. By 1950, her work had expanded to fields like rocketry, ramjets, and guided weapons. In 1955, she was made the Senior Principal Scientific Officer at the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Beatrice Shilling wasn't just a mechanic or engineer, she was a remarkable character opening new doors for women in engineering. Even today, it is widely believed that if Shilling hadn't been there in World War II, the world might not look the way it does now. We hope you like and share this video by Discover TV. Thank you so much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.